Hey, welcome back to the Ping Pong Flix Show. My name is Chris Wong. This is episode 365 of the Ping Pong Flix Show. Thank you once again for joining me on this show where we talk about mostly all about the DCEU, DC films. We cover movies, we cover speculation and rumors, anything to do with DC films. And then if once in a while we have news of Godzilla or Power Rangers, I'm just going to go ahead and throw that in because I'm a huge fan of Godzilla, Monsterverse, and Power Rangers films. I don't really have enough time to cover Power Rangers TV series, but mostly I'm going to work on the cinematic universe and hopefully we get that going. But this is mostly about DC films. And the next newest update for the next DC film that's coming up, which is not part of the DCEU, but we're still going to call it a DC film because it has Joker in it. It has Gotham in it. It has Bruce Wayne in it. It has Thomas Wayne in it. All intensive purposes, it is a DC film. Although it's not part of the DCEU, at least that's what they're trying to do. They're still trying to do, right? But Joker is coming out and we haven't seen much of it other than some behind the scenes pictures, magazine covers, and also that one teaser trailer that we got. And a fan asked today, Kung Fu _hot dog says, "Hi Todd Phillips, when should we expect to see a follow-up trailer?" Todd Phillips replied, "Kung Fu hot dog username checks out. Give us a few more weeks working on it." So is that a kind of confirmation that in a few weeks we're finally going to get a follow-up trailer to the Joker? And it makes perfect sense because the movie is coming out later this year, within a few months really, and then so marketing always ramps up during this time and it's no big surprise. So but it's good to hear coming from Todd Phillips that they are working on it. It might have been great to have shown it at San Diego Comic-Con. That didn't happen, but we're still moving along. We're still going to have some marketing for the Joker film if you're in any way interested in that movie. It did enter Venice Film Festival. It also going to TIFF, so it looks like the studio is very confident in this movie, very confident that this movie could get Warner Brothers a lot of those awards, Oscars, all this type of awards that can actually make it and bring it out, make it more popular than it is, and actually blow it up, maybe even to Heath Ledger levels. I know you're like, no way, Chris. No one's gonna beat Heath Ledger Joker. I know, right? I mean, he's a classic. He's one of the greatest Jokers, if at the greatest Joker in cinematic history. But hey, we haven't seen Joaquin Phoenix's role yet. We'll have to wait and see how he fares. But let's not try to compare it too much because the universe is very varied, right? We should be able to accept all different types of roles because these characters are born and bred through comic books. And these comics books, especially DC Comics, they're very varied. There's so many different versions of these characters. I mean, Joker had so many variations of Joker. Batman, many variations of Batman. Superman, many variations of Superman. And I'm always wondering why we accept one version of Superman, but can't accept others. To the point that even DC itself, they know they can make these multiple versions of these characters because they're what they call, the term is multiverse. They've created this multiverse so that they could different writers, different artists can lend their own artistic effort and creativity to the character and yet be part of what we call like a canon to the DC universe, DC Comics especially. So Can they transfer that to the movies? Maybe. Is that what they're trying to do in the terms of having a black label, having the DCEU? That's really interests me, and I think that's why Joker is very compelling, because we can see this Joker and say, hey, that works. That Joker works, and you know what? Jared Leto's Joker works as well. And if there ever another time they want to start a new little universe and say, hey, that Joker works as well. And to that effect, you could almost say, because there's a multiverse, you could almost say that Heath Ledger's Joker is still out there, still alive, running around in that section of that universe. And so it makes it much more easier, I believe, to accept all these different variations. You may not like a certain variation, you may not like a certain type of character, on how it's done, but I think you should be willing to accept it, because it could occupy a different universe in this multiverse, which is the DCEU, DC universe. Actually, DCEU is another universe in this whole, and I know people are like, don't call it worlds of DC. That's pretty much a multiverse is, worlds of DC, different worlds of DC, and I think I'm willing to accept that, but to the point that I still want to see more of the DCEU. But in coming terms about talking about different variations of characters and how we interpret things, Avengers Endgame writers, I know this, you're gonna get triggered on this, I know it already. But this is coming from Comic Book Resources, and also, actually, this came originally from Screen Rant. But the headline is, Avengers Endgame writers know how to fix Superman on the big screen. And I know you DCU fans, like, where we're like, no, I don't want to hear any of that stuff. Go away. But, I'm optimistic. I want to hear different versions of it, and I want to hear what people have to say about this. So this is what the article wrote. The writers of Avengers Endgame know which DC character they'd be interested in bringing back to the silver screen if they were given a chance. While speaking with Screen Rant, the duo were asked which DC character they would like to write. Screenwriters Stephen McFeely and Christopher Marcus were quick to name Superman. More than that, though, they also know how they would tackle such a project. The pair explained that they would love to give Superman the Steve Rogers treatment, believing the success of the Captain America movies shows that you don't have to dirty Superman up in an effort to create a compelling narrative for the character. I certainly think that Captain America shows that there are certainly ways to do a really good Superman movie in this day, Feely explained. You don't have to dirty him up. You don't have to get rid of his earnestness, Feely said, adding, the Christopher Reeve Superman is one of my favorite movies. And so that's one we certainly borrow from all time. So you can go ahead and check out that interview, that Screen Rant interview, in the description below. So go ahead and listen to that and give me your thoughts about Superman, about them making a Superman movie or writing a Superman in the way of Captain America. These are my thoughts on it, though. I'm all right with that. Yeah, you're like, what? Why would you be all right with that? Well, here, I told you already, before I even came on to this topic, I am willing to accept multiple different variations of the same character, because that character has been beloved in the DC Comics, and there are so many different variations of that character. There's many ways to tell a story of a certain character. Now, you may be thinking, well, what does that mean? Don't you not like Snyder's version anymore? I love Snyder's version. I love Christopher Reeve's version. I love Brandon Routh's version, even though Brandon Routh's version is really Christopher Reeve's version, but in a more depressing, way. But I love all different types of variations, except Tyler Hoechlin's Superman. It sucked. But for the most part, I accepted that, hey, that is occupying that world. If you don't like that world, you just stay in this world and like this type of Superman or this type of Superman. I'm willing to accept all different types of that. And I'm willing to even watch all different types of certain characters of Superman, right? So that's how I look at it. And if Avengers Endgame writers Marcus and McFeely, I don't think so, but if they've ever come out and do a Superman movie, I would totally watch that, and I would put that on a separate time, separate universe. The thing is, when you're saying that, hey, what? You like the Snyder version? Does that mean you accept the Joss Whedon's Justice League? And I'd be like, no. Why? Because that Superman started off in Man of Steel. That Superman, Zack Snyder, his intention for Henry Cavill's Superman is that he is the ultimate immigrant. And in this day and age, what do we do with immigrants, right? Especially illegal immigrants. He wanted to throw in that aspect of that character alongside being the most powerful being in the world, in that world, and what people will do when they fear that type of power, right? He wanted to throw a realistic spin to it. He also wanted to throw in the fact that he, Superman, of course, he's an illegal immigrant. He didn't exactly get a green card when he flew down here. I mean, it's just the reality of that. And what the world would see him at. He actually, Zack Snyder, they want to say that they dirtied Superman up, but I think they just put a realistic, Zack Snyder, what he did was put a realistic look at how mankind, a real life man, real mankind, how they would react to Superman, an actual Superman coming down to Earth. And a lot of people who call Superman being dirtied up is not willing to accept that mankind is in fact ugly. Yeah, humankind is in fact ugly. There are pockets of greatness. There are pockets of goodness. But for the most part, it's ugly. It's very negative for the most part. Look on Twitter. Twitter is a negative app. There's more negative things on there than positive things. So it's just a realistic outlook to a society on what they would do when an illegal immigrant who is more powerful and stronger than anything they've ever seen comes to the planet. How would our ugly human, the bringing out the most ugly of humankind, of mankind, how would we react to that? And I always said it before, Henry Cavill could just be Christopher Reeve Superman coming down to the planet. But because of the society and how Jonathan Kent knows about how the realism of this society is and what they would do when they find out that he's Superman, he's an alien, it would affect it. It would they would take him in, they would experiment on him. Those are actual things that are ugly humankind would actually do. And so that's why it takes Man of Steel is a different version of how that world looks at superheroes, how that world will react to superheroes, especially ones that are incredibly strong and from another world, and like Henry Cavill's Superman. Christopher Reeve's Superman is different. Christopher Reeve's Superman, it's during a time when we want to see heroes, when we want to accept them without even too much of a question, right? And is during the time where it's more of a comic booky, kind of like cartoony type realism. It's nothing, they don't want to bring out the ugliness of humankind other than painting the villains as being ugly. But most of the society is good, with the exception of criminals and stuff. It's black and white. There is no level of gray in there. And they don't want to explore the levels of gray within those types of movies, which is fine. I mean, that's a different type of comic book movie. And I think that's the type of comic book movie that Avengers Endgame writers Marcus McFeely want to make if they ever make a Superman movie. And that's a different type of version of Superman. Which one do I prefer? I think I like to actually go into the character and see him as something else than what what we've seen before, and I think Man of Steel painted that perfectly. Something that we've never seen Superman, a situation where Superman had to be before, except what he in the comics. In the comics, you see those aspects, but most people, general audiences, don't read the comics, and so hopefully after seeing Man of Steel, they picked up a comic book, but that's not entirely the case. But like I said, there's many different variations of the character, and I'm willing to accept all types as long as they don't hijack someone else's universe, which Joss Whedon did. He hijacked an existing universe instead of saying, "Hey, you want me to make a Justice League movie? Let's Zack Snyder finish that movie, finish his universe, finish his sandbox world." And then why don't you let me go and recast somebody else, get all these other characters, and I will go ahead and make my own Justice League movie. Then we can't fault him for that because he's making it his own. He's not hijacking someone else's universe. He's making his own universe. And if he had done that, then we wouldn't be doing this today. We wouldn't be going through this whole Snyder Cut situation today. It just makes it much more compelling. So I can take any of these different types of aspects. I might not like some of them, kind of like I don't really care for the Superman, the Tyler Hoechlin Superman on the CW show, the Supergirl show. I mean, I think Cameron Cuff, who plays, Superman's grandfather in Krypton, is a better Superman than Tyler Hoechlin. Tyler Hoechlin is just, the way they characterize that Superman, it's just awful. I mean, they got the basics where he's like a big boy Blue Scout, blue Boy Scout, and it's just like the comics and things like that, and just like Christopher Reeve, sure, but they just made him very weak. For the strongest, most powerful character in DC Comics, and they made him one of the weakest characters in the CW show, and that's one of the main things I really don't like about that. They really depowered him in a way, and it just sucks. But in any case, that is their own universe, and they're doing quite a bit of things on that. And that's my next topic, is that even though I don't care for the CW shows, even though I don't care for their low budgetness, even though I don't care for the characters, I don't care for the things in there that the politics they throw into the thing, and the things that they go through, I do want to say that I commend them. I commend the CW shows to taking it to places that the current movie world, especially the last regime that was afraid to go through Zack Snyder's original Justice League art, afraid to do time travel, afraid to do paradox universes and stuff, afraid to kill off things, afraid to kill off heroes and stuff like that, afraid to do all these types of things, and they were completely just wanted to go in childish directions. I mean, even Avengers Endgame at least had Thor lopping off Thanos' head, right? Things like that. They went to time travel. They did parallel universes, whatever. CW has been doing it this whole time. So the one thing I want to commend about CW is that they are not afraid to go out there. They're not afraid to take their characters and put them through situations that are literally out of this world. They've got aliens, they've got gods, they've got immortals, they've got everything you've seen in the comic books. And like I said, if they were ever to have the budget for the movies, if they were given hundreds of millions of dollars and made movies out of them, I think it would be pretty damn successful because they're not limited by their budgets. They would be able to make an incredible Flashpoint Paradox. They would have made an incredible Crisis, well, we haven't seen Crisis on Infinite Earths yet, but the other Crisis, and they would have made they would make Kingdom Come how Kingdom Come is supposed to be, right? So I gotta give it to CW for being that courageous and not cowardly like what the last regime is. So I'm very hopeful that because of what Avengers Endgame has done, because of what the stories they're telling in terms of how they're telling it, multiverse, universes, galactic stuff, right? And what CW is going to do with Crisis and Infinite Earths and multiple characters and stuff like that. I hope this compels the current regime of the DCU, instead of being too scared to go blockbuster routes, and they're just doing low budget movies right now, having horror directors come in and only working with smaller budgets and stuff like that. I hope all this other things that are happening on these other sides is compelling compelling the DCEU, or if there's anything left of the DCEU, to actually go forward and say, hey, I think we were wrong. I think when we go to these boardrooms and we meet with these filmmakers and directors like Zack Snyder, and we see these totally out of the box ideas, we should listen to it and maybe trust it a little bit better. Maybe say, hey, you know what? We were kind of afraid to do it back then, but I think we're ready to accept it now. I think we're ready to accept all these different versions of these different characters. We don't have to tie it down to certain aspects that we want to agree on. We don't have to go all in on nostalgia. We don't have to go all in on being safe. We don't have to go all in on being low budget. We can broaden our horizons, broaden our repertoire, broaden our different stories, and actually be able to trust the filmmakers in their visions and their ideas, and say, hey, yeah, that sounds crazy. That story sounds amazingly crazy, but hey, there might be a subset of fandom that can totally accept that can totally say, that's great. That's perfect. Let's make that. Give them $100 million budget or whatever budget and say, hey, go ahead and do that. That sounds crazy, but what do I know, right? What do I know? If we're looking at CW, if we're looking at Marvel, and I know you're telling me right now, don't look at other, but hey, this is the competition. And if the competition is doing something far out there that a filmmaker has come to you with those exact same ideas, then maybe you should start listening to those crazy out there ideas, especially the ones that Zack Snyder had put out. The whole Justice League art that Zack Snyder put out, it was crazy, and they were like, it was too crazy. But hopefully, with all that has said and done, with everything that we've learned about the Snyder Cut, everything learned about the Justice League, everything we've seen so far with Avengers Endgame and CW, would compel Warner Brothers, the current owners of DC Comics, the current owners who are the only ones capable to make giant blockbusters with DC Comics as an inspiration, DC Comics as a template. They're the only ones that can make DC movies with Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman. They should not be afraid to go the distance because of what the competition is doing and because of what CW is doing. And so I am very hopeful and optimistic that they are now ready to take on those crazy ideas. And at the same time, since you got one that's already like 80 to 90% made, release the Snyder Cut, because that is in itself has a subset of fandoms that would enjoy and pay money for that. And you could throw it into a universe that you don't want to really focus on, but you're saying, hey, let's finish that out. Let's make some money on it. And this whole subset of fandom will completely enjoy that. And hey, maybe if it works really well because they haven't really touched it, and they let Zack Snyder do it, it may be great. And they're like, well, let's expand on that. Wow. We still want to create this part. Maybe we'll get another director to do another type of Superman while this is still going on. The possibilities are endless with having a property like DC. And I think with the property like DC, I think Warner Brothers and Warner Media should make 100% use of it and expand the horizons, not just in the CW, not just in the DC universe streaming, but in the cinematic movie business as well. And that is it. I want to end on this, though, because I did talk about Snyder Cut. I want to congratulate Project Comic-Con to sending their check out today to American Foundation of Suicide Prevention National, $14,930, all to the American Foundation of Suicide Prevention. Huge contribution. This is fantastic. Thank you, Lex Alessandro, for orchestrating this whole thing of actually getting the check together. But thank you to everybody in the Project Comic-Con. You know who you are. The Nerd Queens, McD, Will Rollins, Eric Blake, Lex himself, so many people that were involved, Lord Koji, everybody in that Project Comic-Con team. Thank you so much for doing this, and I look forward to the next thing for the movement, which I believe is the Ann Sarnoff letter campaign with our Snyder Dollar Bills. And just to let you know, Warner Brothers, if you had announced the Snyder Cut before Project Comic-Con, the American Foundation of Suicide Prevention right now would have got over $28,000 instead of $14,930. Shame on you, Warner Brothers. All right, guys, thank you so much for subscribing. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.